Ladies and gentlemen, Scream 7 looks to be taking some big swings with some of these recent casting announcements. At this point, it looks like a decent mix of old and new, which could amount to a proper legacy sequel. That will hopefully be a proper love letter to the franchise that real fans always wanted. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So over the past several days, it's been confirmed that Scott Foley is returning for Scream 7 in some capacity. There were also rumors that Skeet Ulrich himself might be returning as well. And all I have to say about that is that I hope it's not in the form of another stupid-ass Billy Loomis vision. And then we have Matthew Lillard himself being confirmed to return for Scream 7. So we have 3 previous Ghostfaces returning, 2 of which that have been confirmed dead, and 1 that has been speculated to be alive for years now. So the question on everyone's mind is, what the f*** is going on with this movie?
I'm feeling woozy here!
Now my instant reaction to all of this is of course to ask the question why. In what capacity are all of these characters returning? Does Kevin Williamson have good reasons for them to be there? How will they be used? All of you know by now that I have no interest in cheap nostalgia bait. I have no interest in fan service just for the sake of fan service. To me, the story has to be right. That's what's going to make this movie sink or swim. And we all know that sometimes some creatives like to use fan service, cameos, and Easter eggs as a way to disguise the fact that the rest of their movie is shit. So I would encourage everyone who is getting a little bit too excited about these announcements to tread carefully. Use caution anytime you think it's safe to place your faith in anything that modern Hollywood is doing.
If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
What these casting decisions have going for them, outside of the unpredictability around them, is that one of the original Scream creators is involved. If this was Radio Silence making these decisions and bringing these characters back, I would have easily said no thank you and moved on. But because Kevin Williamson is who he is, and because he meant so much to this franchise, I'm willing to at least wait and give this a chance. Now I've heard rumors that Scream 7 will be about new killers using AI to recreate the past killer's likeness, as a way of kind of messing with Sidney's mind. Now this would make some kind of sense if you take into consideration the way Scream as a franchise has a history of taking certain trends and doing a bit of social commentary on them. And nothing is at the center of conversation right now more than AI, especially when talking about the future of entertainment. But if I'm being brutally honest, if they do in fact intend to bring these characters back using AI technology at this point, specifically Stu Macher, I think that would be looked at as a cop-out by a lot of fans.
No, don't like that.
What they would be doing is trying to appease some of them online fan theories without actually going through with it. And that to me would come off as very gimmicky, and I think it would ruin the perception of this film for a lot of people, including myself. To me, you don't make these announcements, you don't bring these guys back if your intention is to make them artificial recreations. I think that would be a slap in the face to some fans. To me, if you are bringing them back as a way of fleshing out the history of Ghostface's crusade against Sidney Prescott, that sounds a lot more interesting than them being simply used as a manipulation tactic by a brand new killer. Could they do flashback sequences where they digitally de-age these characters to show that Stu and Billy's plan had an even more direct connection to Roman's plan, and it kind of fleshes out the whole cult of Ghostface rumor that has been floating around the internet for years? Maybe, but I would use caution with that concept as well, because if history has taught us anything, it's that de-aging technology doesn't look as good as Hollywood thinks it will. So without those 2 options, it pretty much only leaves the real possibility that all 3 of them are actually still alive. And for Stu Macher, they could very easily make that work. His death wasn't as definitive. With Roman and Billy, on the other hand, I think you have to be careful, because it could create a situation where it significantly lowers the stakes in your movie. You don't want to get to the point where death means nothing in your franchise, because that's how you end up becoming the Fast and the Furious movies. I mean, Scream 6 was already on its way there with Chad's inexplicable third act plot armor, so I think we need to get away from that as well, and pretty quickly.
That's right, it stinks!
The truth is that I don't really know the right answer when it comes to bringing back Billy and Roman. At the end of the day, if you asked me what I would do, I probably wouldn't bring either of those two characters back because of their definitive deaths. Stu, on the other hand, is an intriguing one because he is the only character of the three that could have conceivably survived. Now, it's been rumored for years, and there's been a ton of fan theories on this subject. So even bringing back Stu at this point does have its disadvantages, because you don't want it to feel like James Gunn's DCU, where it feels like you're making movies to appease social media. If they are legitimately bringing back Stu, I hope they do it in the right way, and in a way that's original and makes sense. I don't know if him being a leader of the cult of ghost faces will be as impactful now as it would have been years ago. There's just been too much buildup around that idea for so long. You are bound to disappoint people when you start playing with their expectations. To be clear, I'm not against Stu returning, I just think that it needs to be right. I could see him in a Hannibal Lecter type role, where he's still locked up and they need to get information out of him as a way of hunting down the new Ghostface, whoever that ends up being. Not a terribly original idea, but if they let Matthew Lillard cook, if they let him be his unhinged self, I think it could make for a very entertaining experience. When it comes right down to it, regardless of how these characters are ultimately used, it is starting to feel like this movie is going to be huge. For better or for worse, it does feel like it's intended to be the connective tissue between all of the movies. I just hope that they figured out how to do that in the most satisfying way possible.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Now, while I have my reservations, some people are absolutely losing their mind over these announcements. And why? Well, obviously it's because there is some narrative floating around on the internet that they feel the need to build on. And by some people, of course I'm talking about the Simps, the people that are Scream fans in name only, the people who are praying for this movie's downfall, the ones who are threatening to boycott the film altogether. We have comments like this in response to the Matthew Lillard news. Quote, "Don't let this distract you from the fact Melissa was fired for supporting Palestine." Again, it's pretty hard to be fired when you never actually had a contract to be in this movie in the first place. But I digress. I guarantee you that 90% of the people who are excited about this news are not thinking about Melissa Barrera at all. In fact, I don't think people think about her much at all based on the box office results of some of her films post-Scream.
You about to cross some lines.
Guys, relax.
My question is, when are you people going to let this go? Everyone has pretty much moved on, except for a handful of people on social media. And then we have this response that says, quote, "Putting aside the elephant in the room, Scream 7 being about legacy crossover movies isn't a terrible idea, but doing it without Melissa and Jenna is like if they fired Tom Holland before No Way Home and brought back Toby and Andrew and kept Ned."
You serious?
Well, outside of the part where you said they would keep Ned, I actually like that scenario, so I don't think that this is the flex that you think it is. On top of that, comparing two tourists in the Scream franchise to Spider-Man of all characters is a choice. The truth is that nobody gives a shit about either of these two actresses being in Scream or not, other than some people on Twitter. Jenna and Melissa were placeholders. They were keeping Neve Campbell's spot warm until she got back, until she got what she deserved. Scream is Sydney's story. Now, could Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera fit into this movie somewhere? Of course. But to suggest that they are anywhere near as important or should be put on the same level as Neve Campbell is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. When did people get the impression that these two actresses are just as important, if not more important, than the actress who literally helped build this franchise? I don't understand. It feels like they really do live in their own little social media bubbles, doesn't it? Bottom line, Scream 7 does not need Melissa Barrera or Jenna Ortega. I'm not even sure it really needed the return of Matthew Skeet or Scott But here's what I do know. It doesn't matter who's in this movie if the story, if the creative isn't right. If that's not right, then all of this speculation, all of these theories, all of this infighting is all going to be for nothing. Because if the story ends up being garbage, then this movie is going to be no different than the previous entry that was a movie that was Scream in name only.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.